Kevin felt a little excited at the idea of running Williams Media and talking with Brittany, who would be his newest client. However, just as his butt touched the chair, Brittany looked at him indifferently. "Sorry, I'm saving this seat for Jessica." "Huh? I thought Jessica was sitting over there." Kevin pointed at a voluptuous woman who was at least 7 or 8 seats away from them. His face was filled with confusion. Brittany frowned and looked very unhappy. She raised her hand to cover her nose and said in a muffled voice, "You seem to have a strange smell. I feel uncomfortable, so can I trouble you to change seats?" Kevin was stunned. He raised his arm to sniff. It didn't smell. He had just changed into clean clothes before he went out. This woman must have a problem with her nose. "Kevin, you haven't taken a shower for a few days, have you?" commented one of the guys. A female classmate sitting next to him quickly said, "Come on now, I'll change seats with you, Kevin. Don't make Beauty Brit so sick that she can't eat." Kevin wanted to argue, but at that moment his old friend Zach walked over and urged Kevin to get up. They found a corner and sat down together. Zach explained, "Look, Kevin, Brittany is not a woman we can get close to. You are asking for trouble. Come on, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's have a drink." Kevin looked at Brittany, who was talking and laughing with Tucker. He shook his head and sneered. He picked up the glass and clinked it with Zach. The two of them drank as if there was no one else around. Zach might be the only one among the group of old classmates who treated him sincerely. When Zach was bullied in school, Kevin had helped him with his fights in the past. As the drinks began to flow, the guests suggested that they should all play music, dance together, and play a game or something. Most people remembered that Brittany had been a fabulous dancer since primary school, so they started to cheer her on and let the future big star put on a show for everyone. Buzzed off the drinks, Brittany's beautiful face was flushed, which added to the already intoxicating atmosphere of the reunion. Unable to resist the unanimous request of her classmates, Brittany got up and walked to the middle of the private ballroom, dancing slowly along with the music. Her bright, misty eyes swept across everyone who was there. Her slender waist moved quickly, then more slowly, her entire body dancing like softly flowing water. It was particularly charming. All the male students were entranced, and some had already unconsciously gasped in wonder. Stunning! She was too beautiful. Brittany was even more attractive than she had been back in school. The gathering finally ended as evening fell. Because the class president and the head teacher were busy today and were unable to attend, everyone got together and arranged to meet again in the future. When Brittany was about to leave, several male classmates rushed to say goodbye and offered rides in their fancy cars. In the end, Brittany said that she already had a car, and the driver was already waiting outside. So everyone watched Brittany get into the latest Maserati and speed away. The guys who were still fighting over the chance to see Brittany off were all left with embarrassed expressions on their faces. Zach saw the Maserati turn around and could not help but whisper in Kevin's ear, "Brittany is so beautiful. I would give up 5 years of my life just to sleep with her once." Kevin smiled helplessly. Just as he was about to say something, the phone in his pocket suddenly rang. "Fly me to the moon." Everyone within earshot immediately looked at Kevin. What year was this? Why did he still use such an old-fashioned song as a ringtone? Kevin took out his phone. When he saw that the caller was his wife, he smiled and answered the call.
Lily asked him, "Did you buy the clothes I asked you to get for the meeting? After you take care of that, we'll meet at home."
Her tone was very cold. After she'd finished speaking, she hung up the phone. Only then did Kevin remember that he had not bought the clothes yet. He quickly exchanged contact information with Zach and then rode away on his little electric scooter in a hurry. The women who saw this snickered. Oh my God, Kevin actually rode a tiny electric bike to attend the get-together. Do you think he'll run out of juice before he gets there? They burst into laughter. Even though Kevin was already pretty far away, he could still hear them clearly. On the other side of town, Lily was about to leave the office when a man in a black suit suddenly appeared in front of her with a gift box in his arms. "You are?" Lily said as she looked at the unfamiliar man in front of her with a puzzled expression. The man in the suit handed the box to Lily and said very politely, "This is a gift for you from our boss." At this time, two of Lily's assistants walked over and looked curiously at the man and the gift box in his hands. "Wow, Madam Chairman, a gift from an admirer." Lily glared at them and pretended to be angry. "Don't talk nonsense. I don't have any suitors." Lily turned to look at the man in the suit and hesitated for a moment before taking the box. "Who is your boss?" The man replied, "Sorry, the boss said that he hopes you can guess his identity. The gift is for you personally. I hope that you have a good time tonight." After saying that, he turned around and left. Lily looked at the gift box in her hand and finally decided to open it to see what it was. When she opened it, she was instantly stunned. The two assistants beside her could not help but let out a scream. "Oh my God, this is the Dream Lover." The rare necklace sparkled in the light. "Oh my God, there are only 10 Dream Lovers in the world. Madam Chairman, your admirer is so generous." Lily could tell at a glance that this was an authentic Dream Lover. Because she had such a strong interest in the Dream Lover bordering on an obsession, she had researched everything related to it in detail. The one she was holding in her hands was definitely genuine. Lily looked at the Dream Lover that was lying in the gift box and felt that it was surreal. Was she dreaming? Who exactly gave it to her? Could it be Bradley Smith? But even to Bradley Smith, the Dream Lover was still out of reach. Could it be that he really liked her so much that he'd spent all his savings to buy the Dream Lover for her? Thinking of this, Lily couldn't help but feel very moved in her heart. If she wore the Dream Lover to tonight's family get-together, she would definitely become the envy of all the women in the family. Lily felt her heart skip with even more excitement. At the same moment, Kevin was trying to figure out what to do about his clothes. He went to the mall and walked around. Most of the suits were in his style. Maybe it was because they were all off the rack and not tailored. He felt that none of the suits fit him very well. Finally, his solution was to call the personal secretary that Uncle Thomas had arranged for him that afternoon. She was very efficient. In less than half an hour, she sent someone to make a simple handmade tailor-made suit and had it sent to Kevin. He carried his clothes under his arm as he rode the electric scooter back to the Joneses family neighborhood. As soon as he entered the house, he saw his wife Lily standing in front of the mirror in the living room, admiring the Dream Lover on her neck. It seemed like his wife was very satisfied with the gift he had given her. She quickly put it on the moment she received it. With the Dream Lover on her graceful swan-like neck, she became even more noble and elegant. Upon seeing Kevin as she walked back from the mirror, Lily instantly hid her exhilarated expression. She looked away to check her clothes and did not look back. She completely ignored that Kevin even existed. Dorothy, who was on the sofa, frowned as she looked at the dark black bag in Kevin's hand. She urged, "Are those the clothes you bought? Hurry up and change. We'll leave in 5 minutes." "Okay, I'll get dressed right away," Kevin responded and quickly went into the other room. He changed his clothes as fast as he could, combed his hair, and then walked out. Dorothy looked at Kevin, who was wearing a dark gray suit, and her face showed a rare look of satisfaction. She nodded and said, "This suit isn't bad. You're finally dressed like a man who has some class." "Hurry up. I don't want to be late again," Lily said as she sized Kevin up. The unhappiness in her eyes also melted away a little. She slipped her feet into her high heels and walked out first. With Kevin driving, the three of them soon arrived at the Jones family's mansion. By now, there were dozens of cars parked outside the mansion. At a glance, they were all makes and models of high-end cars. It was like a luxury car show. Dorothy was wearing a long peacock green dress with an apricot-colored cape. She looked very sexy and elegant as she walked. Her clear, smooth face looked radiant as she walked with her daughter Lily. You couldn't tell at all that they were mother and daughter. Instead, they looked more like sisters. So when the two of them walked into the Jones family's hall, they instantly attracted everyone's attention. Many relatives and friends who knew Dorothy and her daughter stepped up to greet the two of them. Kevin, who was following behind them, was ignored by most people as usual. However, there were some people who liked to pay more attention to Kevin. For example, there was Jason. If he didn't cause trouble for Kevin every time he saw him, it wouldn't be normal. Jason mocked him. "Hey, isn't this Kevin? It's rare to see him dressed like a human. I almost didn't recognize you." Jason walked to Kevin's side and patted him on the shoulder. His voice was so loud that almost everyone in the hall could hear him. Kevin looked at him with a smile and didn't say anything. Jason snorted in disdain. "You got these clothes on sale, right? I remember I saw the exact clothing down at the mall. Was it $75 or $100? Quality stuff, right?" Hearing this, many people looked at Kevin with scorn. Some even laughed out loud. Lily looked at Kevin with an embarrassed expression on her face. She was definitely angry. To think that she had given him $1,000 to buy himself some decent clothes. He, on the other hand, he actually went and bought a cheap suit for $100. Why did he always make things so difficult for her? Kevin adjusted his collar and responded casually. "I'm really disappointed to hear that. Actually, I didn't pay for my clothes." Jason laughed. "You didn't pay for it? Could it be that the owner of the store saw that you were too pathetic and out of pity gave you a new suit?" The people around them started laughing as well. They looked at Kevin like he was a fool. Lily and Dorothy's faces showed their embarrassment. Dorothy coldly snorted and began to walk away. She didn't want to stand anywhere near Kevin, her stupid son-in-law, for another second. "We should go sit down," Lily disappointingly whispered to Kevin. She really didn't want to bring Kevin along to these events. However, unless someone was out of town or dealing with some special circumstances, all the family members had to attend. "Lily, I'm really not talking about you. It's fine if your husband lacks experience and is stingy. Aren't you willing to spend a little money on yourself? The dress you're wearing must have cost around $500, didn't it? It's shameful that you have the nerve to wear it to our family get-together." Jason looked Lily up and down. The smile on his face made her feel very annoyed. Seeing that everyone was paying attention to them, Jason straightened up and patted the suit he was wearing. There was arrogance in his expression. "In order to attend the family gathering, I went to the most famous designer in the country and spent $20,000 to have this suit made especially for me." Wow, $20,000? Everyone thought. Almost everyone in the room was shocked. After all, even though their finances were pretty solid, spending $20,000 for a suit was really too extravagant. Feeling the envious gazes from the people around him, Jason was extremely proud of himself. The way he looked at Lily showed even more disdain. Lily's face turned red. She was both angry and embarrassed. Jason had deliberately made her embarrassed in front of all these people. He really just wanted to see her make a fool of herself. But there was nothing Lily could do. When she glanced over at Kevin, who still had a smile on his face, she felt even more choked up. Kevin noticed Lily's eyes and turned his head to smile at her. After a moment, she quickly turned her head away. Kevin raised his eyebrows and looked at Jason, who had a smug look on his face. Kevin imitated Jason by patting him back on his shoulder. "What are you doing? Who asked you to touch me?" Jason almost jumped, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He angrily slapped Kevin's hand away and quickly brushed off his shoulder. It was as if he was afraid that his clothes would be contaminated with some kind of bacteria by Kevin's touch. Kevin didn't care at all as he put his hand into his pocket and returned Jason's disgusted gaze. He sneered and said, "It's only a $20,000 suit. I was afraid that it would soil my hands. My Lily likes to dress casually. However, she really prefers fine jewelry." After saying this, Kevin pulled a stunned Lily to his side. Now that Kevin had put Jason in his place, he looked around and then looked directly at him. "Didn't you see the dream lover on Lily's neck? It's worth 100 of your fancy suits." Everyone's gaze shifted to Lily. To be precise, they were all staring at Lily's neck. Following Kevin's rebuke, the entire audience suddenly fell silent. So quiet that all you could hear was the delicate piano music in the background. The crowd exploded with questions and comments. One relative said, "Or am I seeing things? Is she actually wearing a dream lover?" Another said, "Heavens, that's really a dream lover." There are only 10 of them in the world. It's a woman's dream." All the women present were excited. Even most of the men were shocked. There were a few people there who had never heard of the Dream Lover necklace, but now they were well aware of it. Everyone looked at her in amazement. For a moment, Lily became the most eye-catching woman in the entire hall. Countless envious gazes fell on her body, which definitely was a boost to her ego. Lily unconsciously shifted her attention to Kevin, who was standing at her side. He seemed somewhat different tonight, she thought. Jason stared at the necklace on Lily's neck and lied. "I think you're just trying to trick everyone. That's no Dream Lover. Where did your family get enough money to buy such a rare piece of jewelry? I think you're just wearing a fake." Kevin snapped back. "It's none of your business how much money we have. We don't answer to you." Dorothy walked over and called to her son-in-law. "Kevin." After giving Kevin a warning look, Dorothy smiled and stepped in front of Jason. "Jason, Kevin is younger than you, so he doesn't know how to bite his tongue. Why are you arguing with him anyway? And where are your parents? Why didn't I see them come today?" Dorothy wanted to change the topic to give everyone a diplomatic way out, but Jason's heart was burning with anger. How could he let Kevin get to him so easily? "My parents are overseas on company business. They aren't lazy like you. You don't have anything to do all day long, do you? You have your little son-in-law to wait on you hand and foot, and you don't even need to babysit him." Jason's words made Dorothy extremely embarrassed. At that moment, a mature older voice interrupted them. "What in heaven's name is everyone doing here?" "Grandma!" Jason's face lit up. He turned around and saw that someone was supporting the family matriarch, Mrs. Victoria Jones, as she slowly walked over. He practically ran to her. Mrs. Jones, or Grandma Jones as everyone called her, looked at her favorite grandson. Her wrinkled face broke into a kind, warm smile. But when she saw Kevin standing beside Lily, her smile vanished. Kevin knew that Grandma Jones had always disliked him, but he didn't really care. "All right, since everyone is almost here, we can all take a seat," Grandma Jones said as she looked at the crowd of relatives. After she had finished speaking, she took Jason by the hand and walked towards the main table. After everyone took a seat, Grandma Jones said a few pleasant words and encouraged everyone to work hard for the family. Then the banquet began. Kevin looked at the table full of exquisite food. Boy, was he hungry. Once he heard the banquet was starting, he dug in. He really didn't care if he grossed out the other people at the table. Lily and Dorothy stared at him a few times, but Kevin pretended not to see. After all, it was just a meal, and he would eat however he wanted. And his table manners weren't that bad. He just ate a little fast. At the main table, Grandma Jones spoke again. "Before the banquet, I heard from a reliable source that the CEO of Williams Media has changed. I was told that he is a young man about the same age as JJ. She looked lovingly at her grandson Jason. "The new CEO will be officially appointed tomorrow." As soon as her voice faded, everyone there started chattering about this unexpected news. They had so many questions. Why did Williams Media suddenly change their CEO? This was unheard of. But everyone knew that this was a great opportunity. For years, the Jones family had controlled several small media and advertising companies. They all wanted to work with Williams Media. Because Williams Media was so powerful, as long as the Jones family could reach an agreement with them, it was safe to say that the Jones family could rise to a whole new level. But they had already sent countless people to seek a partnership with Williams. Their offers had all been harshly rejected. After all, Williams Media was run by the Williams family, one of the most prestigious families in the city. It was normal for them to look down on the tiny little Jones family. But now that they were changing their CEO and such a young man, there might be a slight possibility to join forces with them. Naturally, the Jones family wouldn't pass up such a golden opportunity. They just had to give it a try. When Kevin, who was busy with his meal, heard the news about Williams Media, he raised his head. There was a hint of amusement in his eyes. Grandma Jones was pretty well informed. Grandma Jones watched everyone's reaction with a great big smile on her face. She slowly opened her mouth and asked them, Does anyone have an idea of how to pay a visit to the new Williams Media CEO? If anyone can form a partnership between our families, I will reward them well." "I'm willing to go," said one of them. Another shouted out, "Grandma, I want to go." And yet another said excitedly, "Let me go. I'm the best one here at teamwork." Lily wanted desperately to speak up so that she could play a part in all of this. But when she thought of her low-ranking position in the Jones family, she ended up sitting quietly, waiting to see what would happen. One after another, the family members shared their opinions. Grandma Jones nodded her head in satisfaction. Finally, she set her eyes on Jason, who was sitting beside her with an eager look on his face. Patting Jason's hand, she said, "JJ, I will leave this matter up to you. Don't let me down." "Don't worry, Grandma. I'll definitely get them to make a deal." Jason smacked his chest confidently. Kevin put down his fork and picked up a napkin to wipe his mouth. He looked over at Jason, who was now standing in front of Grandma Jones, and he couldn't help laughing to himself. He wanted to make a deal? What gave him such confidence? Jason didn't know that he had already deeply offended the new head of Williams Media. And he still wanted to talk about cooperating with Williams Media. Kevin thought to himself with a slight chuckle. After the gathering was over, Kevin took Lily and Dorothy home. As they drove along, Lily didn't pay any attention to what Kevin was saying. She was preoccupied with what Grandma Jones had just said about forming a partnership with Williams Media. "What will I do?" Lily wondered. On their way home from the family get-together, Lily thought about her own dreams. If only she could get a chance to talk with Williams Media about forming an alliance. As long as the partnership turned out to be successful, her own company, Siren Corporation, would be saved. If Lily couldn't get any more financial aid, she had to ask Bradley Smith for help. However, she thought he'd just bought the extravagant Dream Lover necklace and given it to her. She didn't know if he still had enough funds on hand to help her company. The more Lily thought about it, the more irritated she became. When Kevin noticed Lily frowning, he could easily guess why she was upset, but he didn't say a word. When Kevin was ready to go to sleep that night, he hopped up on his bed. He lay there and looked at his wife, who was just about to lie down in her own bed, and said thoughtfully, "Lily, don't worry. Jason Jones definitely won't be able to talk with Williams Media tomorrow about making any deal. Aside from you, no one else can succeed." After he'd said this, he didn't care how Lily would react. Kevin yawned, closed his eyes, and went to sleep. Lily was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect Kevin to actually read her mind, but what he said really left her speechless. She wasn't entirely sure he was right, that if she went to talk with Williams Media about the partnership, it would definitely succeed. How could he be so sure that this couldn't be done by anyone other than her? He sure didn't know how to comfort someone. Rolling her eyes, Lily turned off the light. She put the whole thing out of her mind and went to sleep. Early the next morning after Lily left for work, Kevin also headed out. Uncle Thomas gave him a call early in the morning and told him that Miss Sandra Wilson, his new chief of staff, was ready and that everyone was waiting for him to take office. So Kevin slowly rode his brand new electric scooter all the way to Williams Media. Williams Media was located in the fanciest part of downtown Chicago. It was in a majestic 50-story office building that was taller than all the surrounding buildings. The building's parking garage was filled with all kinds of luxury cars, sports cars, and high-end SUVs. Lots of them were electric. Without exception, all of these cars belonged to Williams Media executives and the celebrity superstars that they managed. There was a reason why Williams Media was known as an industry leader in entertainment. They managed their artists very closely and saw them regularly. So the lot was always filled with luxury cars. Looking at all the fancy rides, Kevin thought that it seemed unusual for a CEO like him to ride an electric scooter to work. Just as Kevin was about to park his scooter in a small space at the edge of the lot, a red Ferrari suddenly appeared out of nowhere. "What?" Kevin screamed as he quickly leapt off his scooter. He must have jumped nearly 6 feet away. He turned around and saw that there was a small dent in the front of the Ferrari, along with a long scratch in the paint. His electric scooter had been hit hard. and the rear wheel was bent out of shape. This was the electric scooter that he had just bought yesterday. Sadly, Kevin walked over to his scooter, which was now lying on the ground. Just as he was about to say something, the door of the Ferrari opened and a slender white leg emerged. "Why don't you watch where you're going?" the driver said. The woman's tone was harsh. When she was completely out of the car, the bystander suddenly gasped. "She's so beautiful. Who is this big star?" they said. The willowy beauty wore a tight blue skirt that showed off her figure. Her high heels made her legs look even more attractive. Kevin looked at this beautiful woman in front of him, and he couldn't hide his excitement. Brittany! He hadn't expected to meet her here today. Could it be that she was here to sign a contract with Williams Media? That was quite a coincidence. Although his electric scooter was wrecked, Kevin wasn't injured. Brittany was a new performer who was about to sign a contract with his company, so naturally he wasn't going to argue with her. Brittany recognized Kevin. She frowned and asked, "Kevin, what are you doing here?" She looked at him and then looked at the electric scooter on the ground. She remembered that 2 nights ago she heard someone mention that the security guard at Williams Media suddenly had a heart attack and was sent to the hospital. So the company hired a young man as a security guard. Could it be Kevin? "Why don't you watch what you're doing? Look at all the damage to my car. I'm sure you can't afford to fix it." Brittany looked at the dents and scratches on the front of the Ferrari and felt her heart sink. This was her brand new car. It had now been trashed the first time she drove it. Hearing this, Kevin immediately furrowed his brow. "It was clearly you who hit me. Why are you blaming me instead?" At the moment, a deep male voice came from nearby. "What happened here?" The onlooker stepped out of the way and Kevin saw a man in a blue suit walking over with 2 security guards. When Victor Martin saw the scene in front of him, he was instantly stunned by Brittany's beauty. He stepped forward and said with a smile, "You're Brittany Davis, aren't you? A few days ago I heard that you'd be coming in to sign your contract. I didn't expect you to be here yet." Brittany gave him a faint smile. Now she looked gentle and polite, completely different from a minute ago when she was chastising Kevin. "I'm sorry," she said. "This happened as I was coming in. What can you do about it?" On hearing this, Mr. Martin instantly felt more self-assured and cocky. He had to help Brittany right away. He said, "Don't worry. This is just a small matter." Looking at Kevin, the man said with a serious face, "Do you know where you are? Who said you could ride an electric bike here?" Kevin looked around and said, "Who says I can't ride an electric bike in here? Besides, she's the one who hit me. Can't you figure that out?" "If I say you can't ride here, then you can't ride here. Why would someone in a Ferrari hit someone on a scooter?" While the man spoke, he pointed at Kevin with a disdainful expression. Kevin looked at the man, and his good mood was ruined. Brittany's mouth trembled as she complained, "Mr. Martin, is he the new guard you just hired? I'm afraid he'll annoy a lot of people." When Victor Martin heard Brittany's words, he suddenly remembered that the old guard had suddenly left yesterday. He was told that the new guard would come to work today. He looked at Kevin, who was wearing a baggy t-shirt and shorts, and then looked at the electric scooter lying on the ground. He was sure that Kevin was the new security guard. "I definitely won't allow someone like this to continue working here. Don't worry, ma'am. I'll fire him right now." After he finished speaking, he pointed at Kevin and said, "You're fired. Please pack up your things and leave." Kevin still had a scowl on his face. He read the nameplate on the man's chest. His title was Victor Martin, Production Assistant. What was the company structure like at Williams Media anyway? A production assistant could fire another employee at will? He replied, "You want to fire me, Assistant Victor Martin, right? I would like to ask you a simple question. Who gave you the right to fire someone all by yourself?" Kevin looked at the man with a smile, not caring what the people around him thought. Kevin's question made Mr. Martin's face harden. He didn't really have the right to fire anyone he wanted. After all, he was just a production assistant. He glared at Kevin angrily. He was about to curse at him when he was interrupted by Brittany. "You said Mr. Martin isn't qualified to fire you, right? Then the department manager should be qualified. You just wait." Brittany looked at Kevin with disgust. After she finished speaking, she took out her phone, wrote 2 text messages, and sent them out. In less than 5 minutes, a woman wearing a gray professional suit walked up to them with a cold, bitter expression on her face. Kevin waited patiently by his wrecked scooter to see what would happen. Brittany was still angry about her dented Ferrari and had texted her contacts at Williams Media for help. The mature, stunning woman who came to her rescue looked to be about 40 years old. Her professional attire gave her an air of experience and charm. She was Claire Davis, the manager of Williams Media's publicity department. She was also Brittany's aunt. It was thanks to her that Brittany had gotten the chance to sign a contract with Williams Media. "Auntie!" Brittany called out like a spoiled child. She then walked to her aunt's side and held her arm as she whispered a few words into her ear. When Victor Martin, the other Williams Media employees, and the 2 security guards saw Claire, they immediately greeted her with smiling faces. "Miss Davis, good morning." Claire Davis politely returned their greetings with a casual, "Good morning." Then she turned her attention to Kevin and said sternly, "Did you hit her car? Apologize to her right now, or we will call the police and ask them to handle this matter." Hearing her threat, Kevin let out a laugh. "I don't know you. Why should I listen to you? If you want to call the police, go ahead. Anyway, I didn't crash into her. She crashed into me. So what am I afraid of?" One of the bystanders said, "He doesn't even know the publicity manager. He really should be fired." "Just wait. Miss Davis will definitely fire him," another Williams Media employee added. Seeing Kevin's nonchalant look, Claire's expression became even colder. She raised her hand, pointed right at Kevin, and said, "You're the new security guard, aren't you? I'll tell you right now, you've been fired. Get out of here or I'll call the police and they'll take you down to the police station." "Ha! Send me to the police station?" Kevin raised his eyebrows and pointed at himself. Brittany sneered. "Don't you understand English? Just my luck to see you today. I'll bet you can't even afford to fix my car. I won't argue with you anymore. Just hurry up and get out of here." Kevin smirked and didn't say anything. Just when Claire was about to scold him some more, they were all startled by the sound of a car horn. A brand new Lamborghini pulled up and stopped in front of everyone. They saw a beautiful young woman in a wine-red professional ensemble. She adjusted her gold-rimmed glasses and stepped out of the car. She went straight to Kevin, shook his hand, and greeted him with a warm smile. "Sorry, sir. I went to get the company's new quarterly reports for you, but I lost track of the time. I hope you can forgive me." At a glance, Kevin already knew that this was Miss Wilson, the chief of staff that his uncle had told him about. Miss Wilson straightened her back and looked at the young man in front of her nervously. She explained again, "I'm sorry, sir, but I didn't expect the expressway to be so backed up. This isn't how I wanted to greet our new CEO. It won't happen again." Everyone was stunned. What was going on? CEO? Claire definitely knew who Miss Wilson was. When she saw her showing so much respect towards Kevin, she was enraged. Claire grabbed Miss Wilson's arm and said angrily, "Miss Wilson, you're making a huge mistake. This is the new company security guard. What's wrong with you?" Miss Wilson frowned and pulled her arm away. She took her phone and a stack of documents out of her bag. "I assure you that I'm not mistaken. These are the documents that our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Thomas Williams, personally gave me regarding our new CEO. This photo looks quite a lot like this gentleman, doesn't it?" Brittany, who was standing to the side, rushed over and looked at the photo on Miss Wilson's phone. It sure looked a lot like Kevin, but the man in the photo had a much more professional appearance. He also looked a lot younger and more handsome. "Miss Wilson, you must be wrong. This is Kevin Williams, my former classmate. Look at his sloppy appearance. How could he possibly be the CEO of Williams Media? Maybe he just looks a lot like him." Brittany pointed at Kevin's clothes with a look of utter disdain. They were all confused. How could the new CEO show up to the office wearing a t-shirt and baggy shorts, riding a tiny, broken electric scooter? Miss Wilson pushed up her glasses and her expression remained very calm. "That sounds right. The information our CEO gave me says that the new president's name is Kevin. And this photo was actually taken 3 years ago, so of course he looks a little older now. Miss Wilson flipped open the documents, and Brittany and Claire immediately went over to look at them. When they saw the name Kevin written conspicuously on the front page, it was like they'd been struck by lightning. Claire Davis pretended to be calm and quickly flipped through the pages. As she read, her face got paler and paler. When she'd finished scanning them, she came to the realization that the young man in scruffy clothes standing in front of her was, in fact, their new CEO. Claire looked up at Kevin in disbelief, but when she saw the scorn in Kevin's eyes, she looked back down at her feet. What had she just done? She was an executive, the company's publicity manager. But in front of all these people, she had been shouting that she wanted to fire the new CEO and that she wanted to have him arrested. For a moment, Claire struggled to speak. She gritted her teeth, carefully stepped forward, and forced a smile. She said, Sir, I'm really sorry. We've made a huge mistake. Nothing like this will ever happen again in the future." "There will be a future?" Kevin looked at her out of the corner of his eye. Claire's face froze and she stuttered. "Please don't do this. I know what I did was wrong. Sir, will you please give me another chance?" Ignoring the puzzled looks from everyone around her, what Claire cared about the most right now was to protect her job and her position. Brittany, who was standing off to the side, also hurried to stand near Kevin. Her expression no longer looked so arrogant. "Mr. Williams, it's all my fault. Don't be angry. Please accept my apologies." Kevin looked at her with an enigmatic smile. He didn't say a word. Brittany's voice became softer and softer as he looked at her. Finally, she couldn't bear to look him in the eyes. Kevin glanced at the time on his watch. He had no intention of continuing to waste time at the door. After thinking for a while, he looked at Miss Wilson and pointed toward Victor Martin, who was trying desperately not to be noticed. "This man tried to fire me to protect the image of Williams Media." After saying this, he motioned towards Miss Wilson, and they both turned and headed towards the grand entrance to the Williams Media head office. Claire, Brittany, and the others quickly followed. Only Victor Martin, who had tears streaming down his face, was left behind. He looked sadly at the group as they walked away from him. As soon as he entered the elegant entry hall of Williams Media, Kevin let out a deep sigh. Williams Media was truly worthy of being the #1 entertainment company in Chicago. The company's ambiance, its lavish details and luxurious decor, everything about it just oozed success. Ever since he was expelled by the Williams family, Kevin had not set foot in such an opulent place in a long time. It could best be described as exquisite, from its world-class design to its perfectly chosen color scheme. And this wasn't limited to the entry hall. The overall style of Williams Media's headquarters was truly stunning. The news of the new CEO taking office today had already spread throughout the entire company. Everyone who saw Kevin smiled and greeted him, wanting to make a good first impression on the new CEO. Of course, many people were surprised when they first saw Kevin, but none of them showed it. His simple, unpretentious appearance seemed to contrast with his new surroundings. He took the elevator to the 18th floor, where his office was located. After entering the office, Kevin sat on the big leather chair and looked at Claire and Brittany, who had entered the room with him. "Do you have anything else to talk to me about?" He flipped open some of the folders on his enormous desk and asked casually as he looked at the contents of the folders. Brittany and Claire looked at each other, and Claire gave her niece a slight smile to comfort her. She took 2 steps forward and said, "Sir, about what happened today, I'm really very sorry. Now, about the matter of Brittany signing her contract." Claire paused before finishing her sentence. Kevin didn't even raise his head as he chuckled to himself. "Sign the contract?" he asked. Brittany smiled awkwardly as she replied, "Mr. Williams, did you forget that I came here today to sign my contract?" She bit her lower lip and looked at Kevin uncertainly. Kevin put down the folder that he'd been reviewing and leaned back in his very comfortable leather chair. "This chair is really nice," he thought to himself. He smiled at the two of them but didn't answer them right away. Seeing Kevin's reaction, Claire wasn't sure what to think. "Sir, how about this? I can accept any punishment you give me, but please don't cancel Brittany's contract, okay?" Kevin laughed out loud. "It's funny, but someone who didn't know me well might think I'm a bully." Claire instantly blushed. Just as Claire was about to say something else, there was a knock on the CEO's office door. Miss Wilson walked over to the door and whispered a few words to someone outside. Then she closed the door and came to Kevin's side. "Sir, Jason Jones, the Jones family representative, is here. He said he wants to discuss the company's financial future with you." As soon as Miss Wilson finished speaking, Kevin got a stern look on his face. He was very unhappy to hear Jason Jones's name. "Get that fool out of my office immediately. And please inform the Jones family that if they want to cooperate with us, they shouldn't let that bonehead show his face around here. They can try again with a new representative. As long as I approve of the new rep, I'll have no problem negotiating with them." Meanwhile, Jason was waiting outside Kevin's office, fantasizing about the new sports car Grandma Jones would surely give him for setting up this deal. But he was shocked when Miss Wilson passed along the CEO's message. As he watched Miss Wilson turn around to leave, Jason was stunned for a moment before he realized what had just happened. "That bastard!" As soon as he swore, everyone in the hall turned to look at him. Jason realized that he was still in Williams Media territory. He immediately stopped talking and left the building while holding back the anger that was welling up inside him. At the Jones family mansion, Grandma Jones reacted by calling everyone over for an emergency family meeting. Seeing that all the members of the family had arrived, Grandma Jones let out a sigh and said, "JJ went to discuss the deal with Williams Media, but he didn't succeed. I think some of you already know about it." Jason added, "Grandma, Williams Media obviously thinks they're better than us. They actually called me a fool. On top of that, they told me to get out and never show my face again." Jason's face was turning red from anger. Grandma Jones, who was sitting next to him, was obviously distressed. When the rest of the family heard this, they immediately started discussing amongst themselves. They were smart people, so they understood right away what had happened. Williams Media was the biggest entertainment company in Chicago, and they had told Jason to scram. Jason didn't dare to fight them head on. All he could do was run home and throw a tantrum. Even Grandma Jones didn't dare to ask Williams Media to explain themselves. She said to her grandson, "I'm sorry you have to suffer for this, JJ." Grandma Jones's heart ached the most for Jason. Seeing how upset he was, she patted his arm and comforted him. "The new CEO of Williams Media is a young man in his early 20s. That's a very young age for someone to take the helm of such a powerful corporation. Naturally, he has his pride, and it's normal that he doesn't like small families like ours." Grandma Jones paused for a moment and looked around the room. But the CEO of Williams Media also said that as long as the candidate is satisfactory, he won't have any problem working with them. So I want to ask everyone, who do you think is most suitable to represent us in these negotiations? The people in the room stopped talking and looked at each other. It was unusually quiet. Williams Media had already told Jason Jones to get lost. After that, who would have the nerve to go back in there? Grandma Jones was disappointed when nobody stepped up to volunteer. "What? No one is willing to go?" she asked them. While everyone else remained silent, Jason suddenly had what he thought was a particularly nasty idea. He stood up and said loudly, "Grandma, I think Lily is the ideal choice to talk with Williams Media about our offer." Jason's words suddenly made Lily the center of attention. She threw an angry look at Jason, who was standing beside Grandma, smiling maliciously. While she knew that Jason always liked to cause trouble, she didn't expect him to be so shameless as to involve her in this mess. Lily tried to speak, but only managed to stammer, But Grandma, Lily was angry, but at the same time she was trying to figure out how to get out of this horrible predicament. She was about to finish her thought when Jason interrupted her again. "Lily, Grandma just wants to give you a chance to help the family. Don't you care about our family?" Seeing the distraught look on Lily's face, Jason smiled. He continued, I know that your Siren Corporation just lost millions. You still seem to be short 4 or 5 million in capital, right? I'm doing this for your own good. If you're willing to help all of us, the Jones family, and if the deal is successful, Grandma won't let your company go bankrupt. What choice did Lily have? Lily was still in shock after being nominated by Jason to represent the Jones family in their negotiations with Williams Media. She was at a loss for words. After Jason finished speaking, he walked over and stood in front of Grandma Jones. I think Lily is really suitable. What do you think, Grandma? In Grandma Jones's heart, Jason was the one that she liked the most, so she naturally took his suggestion more seriously than the others. She reflected for a while and nodded in agreement. Then she looked at Lily and smiled. Lily, you will go to Williams Media tomorrow. Do your best and above all, don't let me down. Grandma, Lily was struggling to come up with a way to get out of this, but she saw Grandma Jones wave her hand dismissively and say, Okay, today's meeting is adjourned. Do whatever you need to handle this. Don't accept no for an answer. Your family needs you. No one cared about Lily's feelings or what she wanted to say. Once the meeting was over, everyone filed out. Lily bit her lip as she watched Jason leave the room with a big smile on his face. She angrily stomped her feet and walked out of the Jones mansion, wondering what she would do next. Lily was confused. When she returned home, the more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt. In the eyes of everyone in the Jones family, this was an impossible task. But now this hopeless task fell on her. She had no idea how she would approach the new CEO of Williams Media to talk about working together with her family. The more Lily thought about it, the more irritated she became. Finally, Lily decided to call Rachel and ask her to come over to keep her company. She also wanted to know if her friend had any good suggestions. After Rachel came over and the two of them chatted for a while, Lily felt a little less freaked out. Rachel got up and walked to the fridge. She took a can of soda and asked Lily as she drank, Why isn't Kevin at home today? Lily smiled helplessly. When I left early this morning, he was already gone. I don't know where he went, but he still hasn't come back. Rachel curled her lips in disgust as she sat on the sofa. She leaned closer to Lily and said, I really admire you. You haven't thought of getting a divorce after these 2 awful years? Lily only sighed and didn't say anything, but Rachel pressed it further. You should also think about yourself. Kevin is holding you back. Your parents want you to have a child, but you still haven't been able to get pregnant after 2 whole years. Plus, your company still owes you so much money. If you find a rich and powerful husband, your life won't be so hard. It's pointless for you to say all this now. We're already married. What are you getting at? Those who get married can get a divorce, Rachel said indifferently. Lily shook her head and smiled. She didn't say anything else about it. After a few minutes, they heard someone at the door. The two women looked up at the same time and saw Kevin whistling as he walked in. With a contemptuous, mocking smile on her face, Rachel watched Kevin walk closer to them. As usual, Kevin was wearing a t-shirt and shorts. He looked like such a loser. Kevin naturally saw Rachel's disdain for him, but he didn't care. He strode up to Lily and sat on the sofa with a smile. He looked at her and said, Lily, your company still needs $4 million, right? Lily didn't even bother to look at him. She picked up an emery board and started to do her nails. Why are you asking this? How dare you try to rub it in? Why do you always say things that make Lily unhappy? Are you afraid that her life will be too easy? Rachel sat up straight and stared at Kevin. Lily sighed and gave Rachel a penetrating look that told her not to criticize Kevin anymore. After all, during the Joneses family quarterly meeting, when Jason embarrassed her in front of so many people, it was Kevin who helped Lily. Now she naturally didn't want Rachel to keep picking on him like this. Kevin turned his head and looked at Rachel. He smiled mysteriously and said, I hope you haven't forgotten what I said 2 days ago. If I can find $4 million to help Lily get through this crisis, you should call me boss. When she heard him bring this up, Rachel instantly laughed. I sure did say that. And if you can't find her $4 million, how about you call me boss? I've never seen someone as helpless as you who still likes to put on airs. Kevin sneered. He took out a bank card from his pocket and handed it to Lily. Lily, I originally wanted to bring you cash, but it was too much to carry around. This card has $4 million on it. Take it. Lily took the card in a daze and didn't know how to react. Rachel laughed again. She felt that Kevin was acting like a fool again. I can't believe you're still carrying on with this lie. I'm dying of laughter. Who's the boss? Kevin asked quickly. It's not you. After saying this, Rachel realized that she had been tricked. Her face immediately turned red and she glared at Kevin. Kevin chuckled and looked at Lily, who obviously didn't believe him and was about to toss the card in the trash. Lily, do you still have that card reader you use at work? Why don't you log in and check the balance of the account? I wouldn't lie to you. Lily held the card in her hand and looked into Kevin's eyes. She had her doubts. But she also wanted to believe him, even though he didn't have a job. After all, he still relied on her to support him. Now he hands her a card and says that there are $4 million on it. Anyone would find his words hard to believe. Lily, since he asked you to try, you should try. He asked for it. I'm still waiting to hear him call me boss. Rachel crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at Kevin with a sneer. Lily tightened her grip on the bank card and looked at Kevin, who was waiting expectantly. Kevin, you really want me to check it out? Don't worry. I would never lie to you. Kevin gave her a determined look. Lily nodded and said, okay. Then she got up and walked to the study and turned on the card reader. The password is your birthday, Kevin reminded her in a low voice. Lily looked up at him and then entered the password. After a moment, the card's balance appeared on the screen. $4 million. Lily was dumbfounded. When Rachel came over and saw the long string of numbers, she stared open-mouthed at the screen. How is this possible? She asked. As soon as Dorothy Jones entered the house, she saw that something was up. She frowned and walked over to Lily, Kevin, and Rachel in the study. What's going on? When her gaze fell on the ridiculously high number on the card reader, she was absolutely stunned. Where did you get so much money from? Lily looked up at her mother and then looked at Kevin. She pursed her lips and replied, Kevin gave me the card. What? Kevin gave it to you? Dorothy Jones looked at Kevin in disbelief. Where did you get so much money? Kevin smiled and shook his finger at her playfully. I can't tell you, so please don't ask, but I can assure you that this money came from an honest source. Lily, just use it and don't worry. Then he turned to look at Rachel. He scratched his ear and said, I believe you said you wanted to start calling me boss. You can start. I'm waiting. Rachel stared at him in wide-eyed disbelief. She was really flustered, and she raised a scolding finger toward Kevin. She was tempted to berate him again. Before Rachel did something rash, Lily quickly took the card and the reader and pulled Kevin into the bedroom. We are the only ones in this room now. Kevin, tell me the truth. Where did you get this money from? Lily asked softly. She locked the door behind her and walked slowly up to Kevin. He looked at her guardedly, but he was secretly delighted. Lily was concerned about him, wasn't she? He thought for a moment, smiled, and asked her gently, If I told you I'm actually an incredibly wealthy business executive and that this money is a drop in the bucket for me, would you believe me? Lily frowned at him and pulled away. Don't joke around. Forget it. If you really don't want to tell me, I don't want to keep asking you. Anyway, you have to promise me that this isn't dirty money. I hope that you're not involved in anything illegal. Otherwise, I would rather see my company go bankrupt than to take a dime from you. Kevin sighed when he heard her say this. Don't worry. I guarantee that the money is legal. You just need to use it quickly to save your company. Lily had her doubts, but he was so convincing. She thought for a long moment before putting the card away. As she did this, she said, Okay, I believe you. You can rest assured, too. I will definitely pay you back as soon as possible. It may take some time, but I'll repay you. My money is your money. Kevin waved his hand nonchalantly and walked out of the room. When he got to the living room, he saw that Rachel had already left. She ran away before she called me boss, he figured. Later, Dorothy was also wondering where Kevin had gotten the $4 million, and Lily pulled her aside. She spoke to her mother very quietly and seemed to calm her fears. Afterward, Dorothy's attitude towards Kevin was a little gentler than before. Recently, Chicago had been in financial turmoil, and as the leading company in Chicago, Williams Media had suddenly taken on a young new CEO. Just when countless companies in the entertainment industry were dying to work with them, Williams Media was rejecting all of them. They even turned away the larger companies that they had always done business with. It made sense that the ones who were able to join forces with Williams Media had to be tied to a wealthy Chicago family or a large company. But this time, what shocked everyone was that they were partnering with a relatively unknown family, the Jones family. Many people had never heard of Lily before, but she had actually managed to come to an agreement with Williams Media. In Chicago, the Jones family was only considered to be a third-rate family, and Lily was only from a minor branch of the Jones family tree. In the upper crust, most people didn't even know that she existed. Some people also heard that Jason had approached Williams Media to discuss a partnership, but was rejected. This was even more confusing. Even the great Jason was chased away. How did Lily, this unimportant member of the Jones family, manage to get her foot in the door with Williams Media? What was the new Williams Media CEO thinking? Why did he choose to work with the insignificant little Jones family instead of so many powerful companies? Lily herself couldn't figure it out. No one would believe her. On the day when she went to discuss the partnership, she didn't get to see the CEO. All she had to do was sign the contract. Everything went over so smoothly, making her feel like she was dreaming. The Jones family had booked the entire banquet hall of the very luxurious Whistler Hotel in Chicago for that evening. Grandma Jones brought everyone together to celebrate Lily's success in sealing a deal between the Jones family and Williams Media. Everyone in the Jones family accepted Grandma Jones's request to attend the celebration banquet. On top of that, Grandma Jones had invited a lot of famous people in the Chicago area to attend their bash. There was only one goal, and that was to let everyone know that the Jones family had formed a partnership with Williams Media. In the future, the family would definitely have a chance to become one of the top families in the Windy City, as some people referred to their town. Lily had become the most noteworthy guest in the banquet hall. This was mainly because she had done so much for the Jones family, so she was the most important invitee of the celebration. Kevin followed behind Lily, who was dressed ever so elegantly. Just as he was about to take a seat, he heard a cold rebuke from someone beside him. "Please find another seat. This one is reserved for Miss Phoebe Anderson." Of course, it was Jason speaking. Behind him stood a beautiful young lady wearing an elegant silk dress that fit her very snugly from its low slit up to its high neckline. Kevin casually glanced up at her, looked away, then turned back again to get another look. He felt that this woman seemed somewhat familiar. He thought he'd seen her somewhere before. Jason saw that Kevin hadn't moved and was still staring at Phoebe. He took a step forward and deliberately bumped into him. "Didn't you hear me? This seat is reserved for Miss Anderson." Kevin wasn't prepared for this kind of physical aggression. He was a little shaken, but he still didn't leave his seat. He saw that Jason was trying to please Phoebe, but the young woman's face remained cold. Kevin raised his eyebrows. "Miss Anderson?" Kevin replied with a questioning tone. Jason glanced at Kevin out of the corner of his eye. He got more impatient. "You don't even know who Phoebe Anderson is?" A lot of people around them had noticed what was going on. Lily, who was nearby, had an embarrassed look on her face. She was very annoyed with Jason. Again. Lily had already noticed that Phoebe was sitting at another table. It was Jason who deliberately arranged to find a new seat for her. And Lily was certain that he must have done this to get even for her success with Williams Media. Jason was deeply jealous of her, and he had deliberately bullied Kevin just to embarrass her. Kevin remained in his seat, but when he looked over at Lily, he saw the pained expression on her face. In a concerned tone, he asked her, "What's wrong, Lily? Are you feeling okay?" Lily shook her head no. She was considering letting Kevin give up his seat. It was better to avoid any unnecessary conflict, which was sure to follow because Grandma Jones liked Jason the most. Dorothy Jones, who was also nearby this awkward scene, didn't say anything, but she kept motioning to Kevin that she wanted him to take the initiative and give Phoebe his seat. Phoebe was a distinguished guest invited by Grandma Jones. The Anderson family was one of the most prestigious families in Chicago. They had made billions in the global jewelry market and literally had countless assets. How could this squabble be resolved without insulting such an honored guest and her family, and without upsetting Grandma Jones? Lily was very worried that this whole argument with Jason about Phoebe's seat at the banquet would blow up and get her in trouble with the family. As the eldest daughter of the Anderson family, Phoebe was in the spotlight wherever she went. Dorothy Jones knew very well what kind of influence someone like her would have on Grandma Jones. And if Kevin offended Phoebe in any way, that would definitely have a negative impact on Lily. However, Kevin only cared about Lily and didn't even notice the look that Dorothy was giving him. Actually, he noticed but didn't want to do anything about it. Finally, Jason exploded. "Don't you understand English? I've already told you 10 times to give up your seat. What's wrong with you? Just move so Miss Anderson can have a seat." Phoebe scowled and looked impatiently at Jason. Then her cool gaze fell on Kevin. Seeing Grandma Jones also look over at them, Lily was worried about the impression that all this would make on the family matriarch. This would definitely tarnish Lily's image. She turned her head to look at Kevin, who was completely ignoring Jason, and asked him quietly, "Kevin, why don't you change seats?" When Kevin heard his wife speak, he immediately smiled and nodded. "All right, Lily, as you wish." Then he stood up and walked to a different seat and sat down. But he didn't look at Jason and Phoebe Anderson again. Jason was livid, but after all, he had to protect his image in front of Phoebe, so he naturally couldn't act too impetuously. Phoebe had just sat down when she unconsciously looked at Lily with a gaze that pierced right through her. In fact, Phoebe was actually looking at the Dream Lover necklace on Lily's neck. The Dream Lover necklace was something Phoebe had desired for a long time, but up until now, even though her family was in the jewelry business, there was no way for her to actually get one herself. She couldn't have imagined that she would see the long-cherished Dream Lover necklace hanging gracefully on Lily's neck. With her professional and trained eye, she could tell right away that Lily's necklace was real. Lily felt weird to be stared at so intently and felt slightly self-conscious. "Miss Anderson, I can't help but notice that you're staring at me. Is there something wrong?" Phoebe smiled apologetically. "Sorry, Miss Williams. Actually, I wanted to ask, where did you buy your Dream Lover necklace?" Sensing the envy in Phoebe's gaze, Lily's ego got a little boost. She never expected that a rich young lady like Phoebe Anderson would envy a piece of jewelry that she owned. Lily found this feeling to be very satisfying. Lily cleared her throat softly. "This was given to me by a friend." Phoebe nodded in understanding as her gaze stayed glued to the Dream Lover. "I'd like to ask you a favor. Could you perhaps ask your friend to help me buy a Dream Lover necklace?" After saying this, she seemed worried that Lily might turn down her request and quickly added, "Don't worry, I'm not asking for a gift. How much did he pay for this beautiful necklace? I will pay him double." "Double the price?" Everyone around the table who heard the conversation between Phoebe and Lily was shocked. A Dream Lover necklace was worth almost $3 million. Double the price was close to $6 million. She was indeed the most prominent member of the Anderson family. Such wealth! As Lily and Phoebe were sitting together, the contrast between them was obvious. One was gentle and graceful, and the other was detached and elegant. The men in the room were infatuated with them, and the women were envious of them. Dorothy saw that her daughter hadn't responded yet and kicked her leg gently under the table. "What are you spacing out for? Hurry up and answer her question." Lily looked at her mother, and only then did she realize that everyone was staring at her. She had no choice but to take her phone out of her bag. It took her a few seconds to find Bradley Smith's phone number in her contact list. She placed the call and waited anxiously. Kevin watched Lily's actions with an amused smile. He was pretty sure he knew who she was calling. Anyway, he was sure it wouldn't be him. If his guess was right, it was probably Bradley Smith. The call was answered pretty quickly, Lily saw Phoebe staring at her very intently and decided to put it on speaker. Dorothy was close enough to see Bradley Smith's name on the screen and couldn't hide her displeasure. She glanced in Kevin's direction. So it was Bradley Smith who gave Lily the necklace. Dorothy couldn't imagine what would happen if Kevin found out about this. She hoped that he and Lily wouldn't argue over it, especially here at the banquet. It would definitely be awkward for everyone. Bradley Smith was sitting alone at a roadside cafe drinking a beer when his phone rang. Someone from the Williams family had recently told him to keep his distance from them because he had offended one of them. Smith's finances were suddenly in jeopardy, and then the company's tax problem was discovered. He'd lost everything, practically overnight. Up until now, Smith still hadn't figured out who it was that he had offended. He didn't even look at the caller ID. He put down his beer and answered the phone with a gloomy voice. "Hello? Who is it?" Lily's face stiffened and she felt a little uncomfortable. After all, Bradley Smith had always been gentle and considerate to her. Why did he sound so down today?
"Bradley, it's me, Lily. I have something to ask you. Would it be possible for you to buy another Dream Lover necklace?"
When he realized that it was Lily calling, Bradley Smith immediately brightened up. He quickly cleared his throat and adjusted his tone of voice. "Lily, I'm really sorry. I was just having a rough day. So I'm sorry if my tone was so negative. Did you just ask me about the fake Dream Lover necklace?" "Fake?" Lily immediately frowned and looked at Phoebe, who also had the same surprised expression. This was impossible. They couldn't both be mistaken about this. The necklace Lily was wearing was definitely genuine. Bradley Smith sighed on the other end of the phone.
"Yes, it's a copy. Unfortunately, your husband threw it on the ground, but luckily it wasn't broken. I took it home with me. If you want it, I'll send it over to you right now."
Lily was incredibly confused. If the real necklace wasn't given to her by Bradley Smith, then who would have given it to her? She just couldn't figure out who would be willing to spend $2.8 million to give her a Dream Lover necklace. After hanging up the phone, Lily saw how disappointed Phoebe looked. Embarrassed and confused, she murmured, "I'm really sorry, Miss Anderson. I really don't know who gave me this necklace." Phoebe let out a sigh and shrugged it off. "That's fine, Mrs. Williams. I have to say that I've just had no luck finding my own Dream Lover." So Phoebe was disappointed and Lily was extremely perplexed. Because the banquet had already begun, they just picked up their forks and ate, lost in thought. While Lily was absent-mindedly eating her meal, she unconsciously looked over at Kevin, who was digging into his own plate of food. She remembered very clearly that Kevin had said that he would give her the real Dream Lover necklace. Could it really be him? After all, he could easily find $4 million to help her company, couldn't he? But then she thought about it again. The Dream Lover was worth almost $3 million. No matter how cleverly Kevin could borrow money, it would be very difficult to get another $3 million after already giving her all that money to help her company. On top of that, he'd also have to figure out a way to find and purchase an authentic Dream Lover. How could he possibly do all that? Lily was still thinking too much. Whoever had given her the Dream Lover was definitely not Kevin. By now, Kevin was almost full. He put down his knife and fork and picked up his napkin to wipe his mouth. His eyes fell on Phoebe, who was sitting next to Lily. He suddenly remembered why she seemed so familiar. The Anderson family controlled one of the companies that wanted to cooperate with Williams Media. In the file that Miss Wilson had prepared about the Anderson family, there was a publicity photo of Phoebe Anderson. This Miss Anderson was definitely an interesting woman. As Kevin understood it, she was raised by her father to be the company's deputy president at a young age. She was already a reliable executive with a lot of experience. Although the dress she wore to the event wasn't very conspicuous, the simple ring on her finger was worth more than enough to buy a villa in the south of Italy. Others might not notice it at all, but Kevin could tell at a glance. The ring Phoebe was wearing was a valuable antique. Kevin knew this because of all the time that he spent with his grandfather when he was young. Even in his childhood, he had come into contact with numerous professional figures in various industries. Starting when he was about 10 years old, he got to spend nearly 3 years with Claude Fields, an internationally renowned appraiser, to learn how to identify and appraise antiques. The ring Phoebe was wearing had a unique design. It was made of pure gold and it had a ruby of nearly perfect color set in a golden flower. He was certain that it was from the Middle Ages and had to have been worn by royalty. Based on the ruby alone, it was worth a fortune, but with the history likely attached to it, Kevin estimated that the ring was worth about $3 million. Just as Kevin was thinking about giving Lily a beautiful ring one of these days, Grandma Joan stood up and walked to the stage. With a great big smile, she spoke to the guests. "Quiet, please. Lily, please tell everyone about the secret of your successful negotiation with Williams Media. How did you do it? We would all love to know." Grandma Jones couldn't stop smiling. She gestured for Lily to go up on the stage and then went back to take her seat. Lily stood up nervously and hesitated for a few seconds. She didn't go on the stage, but instead remained standing by her seat, slightly embarrassed. "Actually, it was nothing at all. When I went over that day, I didn't get to see the president of Williams Media. It was his secretary who brought me the contract and asked me to sign it." Everyone was astonished to hear this. "What? They signed the contract right away?" Someone said, "So, just like Jason, she didn't get to see the new CEO of Williams Media either." Another added, "I thought she was very capable. Seems like she was just lucky that she went there when the new president of Williams Media was in a good mood. That's why she got the contract." Jason, who was sitting beside Grandma Jones, couldn't help but sneer when he heard the comments coming from the crowd. He turned his head to see Grandma Jones's reaction, but he was already coming up with an idea to get even with Lily for making him look bad. Jason spoke up loudly so that everyone in the room could hear. "Grandma, I think this is really unfair. When I went to Williams Media, maybe the new CEO was just in a bad mood. That's why he had his assistant chase me out. This time when Lily went there, he must have realized how sincere our family was about working with them. That's why he gave us the contract." Jason glanced at Lily dismissively and raised his voice a little. "I think that the second person to go to Williams Media would have gotten the contract anyway, no matter who they were." Lily clenched her fist as she glared at Jason, but she couldn't find the words to answer him. Grandma Jones, who had always loved Jason, listened intently to what her grandson had said. She nodded in agreement. "JJ is right. Lily, you earned the contract with Williams Media pretty easily, but it's not all because of you. JJ also put in a lot of work and he suffered a lot. Obviously, half of the credit goes to him." Lily was extremely annoyed by Grandma Jones's speech, but she didn't dare to argue with her. How could she? Jason was clearly stealing the credit for her accomplishment. Of course, Jason was very happy with the outcome. This definitely wasn't going well for Lily.